Welcome to End of Life University on YouTube. Today I'm sharing with you a conversation I had with Kelley Scott, who is the founder and the executive director of Clarehouse in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is an Omega Home or social model hospice. She is also the president of the Omega Home Network, and we're talking all about Omega Homes, social model hospices for people who need extra help with caregiving and a residence as they reach the end of life. So I think you'll really enjoy this interview. And if you like this content, make sure you share it with other people. Let them know in case they might benefit from listening in too. And be sure you subscribe to this channel down below. Also, subscribe and leave a rating and review wherever you happen to listen to the podcast. And if you can spare a few dollars, maybe you could make a financial contribution by going to eoluniversity.com/support. There you'll find 3 different ways you can contribute and help keep this channel and the podcast on the air. So we'll move on with my interview with Kelley Scott. Today, I'm so happy to welcome my guest, Kelley Scott. Kelley has been caring for dying people throughout the 37 years of her nursing career. Her clinical experience includes inpatient oncology, bone marrow transplant, chronic ventilatory care, home hospice case management, and serving as a palliative nurse consultant with an inpatient palliative care service. Kelley is the executive director of Clarehouse in Tulsa. She founded this project and has overseen all aspects of its startup and development. Nationally, she serves as the president of Omega Home Network and provides consulting and mentoring to aspiring social model hospices. Kelley is a frequent speaker in end-of-life education and nonprofit startup and development. And you can learn more about Clarehouse at the website clarehouse.org, Clare spelled C-L-A-R-E, clarehouse.org, and also the OmegaHomeNetwork.org website if you want to know more about Omega Homes. So Kelley, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really glad we can be here to talk about Omega Homes.
I'm happy to join you.
Yeah, I'm interested from reading your bio as a nurse. It seems like you've always made the decision to work in kind of challenging situations with some patients that not everyone is comfortable caring for. And when you're working around patients with terminal diagnoses, it can be challenging. So I'm just curious about what drew you to the areas where you've worked.
You know, I started working in a nursing home when I was 15 years old and always felt a comfort level with that. I consider myself fortunate to be one of those people that always knew what I wanted to be. Never had that doubt or that question. I knew from the time I was a small child that I wanted to be a nurse. And I found that calling best lived out in those really difficult situations of final days care. And really from my first job on an oncology unit as a new grad, I just always gravitated towards the people that weren't getting better. And I felt comfortable being in that space. I watched a lot of people who didn't feel comfortable being in that space. And I felt like, hey, I'm okay here and I'm needed and it's where I can be my best self. I could really value the relationships that I built with people and considered it a privilege to be a part of that very intimate and very difficult journey. And I felt that from my very first days as a nurse, and I've really never left that.
Well, I'm so grateful that we have you in this field because of all the great things that you've done. And I was just so interested to read in your bio that you actually started the Clarehouse project, and I want to hear about that. But I thought before we went into that, we should, for the audience, we should explain what an Omega home is or social model hospice so everyone really knows what it is we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because there is confusion in the difference between a hospice and an Omega home or a community home for dying, whatever name or description that people might use. we are different from hospice programs. So as you know, medical hospice is a really wonderful managed care program through Medicare and private insurance, where an interdisciplinary team of people come to visit people wherever they live, in their own home, assisted living, any kind of care environment where they might be. But that hospice makes intermittent visits with that interdisciplinary team to support that dying person and their primary caregivers. But they don't take on the 24/7 care, and they don't provide a place to live. So that's still something that a patient or a family is going to be expected to provide. And many people facing life-threatening illness simply don't understand that. They think, this devastating thing has happened, and cure or control is no longer an option, and comfort care is what they've opted for, and they have great insurance or they have Medicare, and so somebody's going to take care of all those needs. And then they find out that that's not the case. They get wonderful support, they get symptom management, they get assistance with medications, they get assistance with personal care, they get spiritual support, social support, but nobody's there around the clock to do the hands-on care. And that is the critical need that can be so exhausting for caregivers, is being responsible for somebody 24/7 and making those really hard decisions and doing a physical level of intimate care that you've never been prepared to do before. So I was hearing that in my practice as a hospice nurse that was making visits to people in their home. I had a caseload of home care patients as well as seeing hospitalized patients for symptom management and end-of-life teaching. And I just kept hearing the same need voiced by patients and families is, we can't do this at home anymore. We're out of gas, or we can't even start this process because we've got to work full time, or we've got little kids at home, or it's an 80-year-old woman taking care of her 85-year-old husband, and he outweighs her by 100 pounds, and she simply can't physically manage it. All kinds of social reasons why people can't provide that care in the final days. And people were saying there's got to be another choice. There should be an option. Somebody should do something. I'm sure you've heard that call and that request.
Oh, yes. So very often. And when you think about it, the fact, I was reading the statistic that 20% of baby boomer women have chosen not to have children. And so that's a lot of people in our population growing older who have a shortage, at least, of family caregivers, of someone available who might be able to come in and care for them. So it seems like it's a growing problem.
It is, and when you look at the changing demographics of our society, it used to be 40 years ago, there was an average of 10 family members available to help with caregiving. Now I think we're down to 7 or 6. It's predicted in over the next 20 years that we'll be down to 3 to 5 people that are available. Kids don't live in the same cities or even states as their parents anymore. The baby boomers aging, that silver tsunami that is happening right now and is going to continue over the next 20 years as all of us boomers go into Medicare and start that system. Caregiving is just going to get more and more difficult. And the options that previously were available were to stay at home and care for that loved one yourself, to go into an institution like a nursing home or a hospital, and those options are not as accessible as people think that they are, or to hire private duty caregiving on your own, all of which are very expensive. And we're not allowed to stay in the hospital to die anymore. Once someone opts for comfort care only, we're looking at discharge in 24 to 48 hours because that's not a covered service anymore. It makes sense that you can't use the most expensive option to provide a comfort level of care, which is what an acute care facility is, but it doesn't make sense to families who are facing this devastating situation and they're losing a loved one, and they think, of course, they should be able to stay in a hospital, but that's not the way the healthcare system works anymore. And so we start looking for different options, and people wind up in an institutional environment where they never wanted to spend their final days. And we're really using a medical solution for a social problem. The caregiving is a social problem. It's not a medical need. Most of the people that live in Omega homes do not require a medical level of care. They simply require that lay level of love and attention to support them through their final days.
Mm. So true. And I know this is probably a smaller issue, but I have seen patients whose home simply wasn't a suitable place for them
Right.
to receive care at the end of life, even if they had caregivers. For some reason or another, the home wasn't a safe place for them to be, and so that also wasn't an option for them to stay there.
Right, and we see that so often where it's either the physical environment is so deteriorated that it's dangerous, or the caregiving environment is not suitable in that the primary caregiver is stealing the dying patient's narcotics to use for themselves. Sometimes it's just simply the family dynamics where there may be lots of family members that are involved, but it is so dysfunctional that it's an absolutely not peaceful place for that person to be or to die. And then there's always the matter of people that don't have homes at all, people that are unsheltered and have nowhere to go and are dying on the streets. But these are all social issues and um, needs that people face that don't really have anything to do with the course of their terminal illness and their care during the final days.
So tell us what an Omega home or a social model hospice offers then as a solution to help out in these situations.
So for my own journey, looking at these needs and hearing that from the patients and families that I was caring for, I really just began to think about what would that look like? What would the solution be? What do we really need to help people die with dignity, really living out their own values and choices and preferences, spending time with the family and accomplishing what matters most to them. And in my heart and mind, it was not a healthcare facility, it was not an institutional environment, it was simply a home. Just a home where we could surround people with love and support from the community and let that hospice provider come in and provide those professional services that already exist. And so for this project, in the beginning, it was very clear that we were just a home. We weren't going to be a hospice because we had lots of those in the community, and that wasn't the need. The need was to fill the gap in care. And we cast about all over the country looking for models to emulate, looking for projects that did this. But all we could find was that medical model, that hospice inpatient unit, or that residential environment that was owned and operated by one community hospice, and they were reimbursable under Medicare, or it was, private pay on a per diem rate by a family. And we didn't really see that model meeting this social caregiving crisis. And we really just kind of made it up as we went along. We thought, okay, the idea is it's just a home. Hospice comes in and provides the case management. We utilize all the love and support of the community to surround that person with this loving home and 24/7 care while hospice does their thing. And we wanted it to be a mission of mercy and compassion. And so that was a pilot that we came up with, that we will try this, see if it works, see if the people in our community respond to it, and go forward from there. And in 2003, we rented a 3-bedroom apartment and raised enough money to pay our way for about 6 months and opened our doors. We did not charge anything for our care, and after 20 years, we still don't. Survive entirely by philanthropy and the generous donations of our community. We work with any hospice program in our community. We welcome all of those programs to make referrals and send their patients to us. And we are like a home, an extension of the family, and hospice provides the case management. So it's really a cooperative, collaborative relationship. We're not a standalone. We can't do this work without our hospice partners, but it really makes that collaboration fill that gap as we work together to meet all the needs.
It's so true. You're providing the home environment plus some caregiving within that home, so the patient's loved ones can still come in and visit with and sit with and be with their loved one, but they are not carrying the full burden of providing care. Is that correct?
That's correct. And that's one of the most common comments that we hear from family members is they say, thank you so much. You allowed me to just be a wife again. You allowed me to be a daughter again. You allowed me to be a brother or an aunt. Whatever, that people just get to be family again, and they don't have to worry about keeping track of the medication schedule and making decisions about when to give what, and did I give it too soon or is it time yet? How to change a brief with someone who's in a bed and can't move. How do you do that care? How do you provide a bath? What does it mean when these bodily changes happen and somebody's fingertips start to turn blue or they get congestion in their chest, and not knowing what that sounds like and what those markers and milestones mean? Now they've got somebody that walks that journey with them, and they're in what we hope is considered the next best thing to home, but they've got companions on the way and people that are going to take that physical burden of care, as well as people that have been through watching people die over and over and over, and we know what it looks like and sounds like and smells like, and we're able to guide them through that and provide them the support and education that they need to remove that fear of the process.
Mm. Which is such a good point, because sometimes there are family members present who physically are capable of being caregivers, who can be on the scene, but emotionally they can't handle the challenge of caring for their loved one, nor should they have to, nor should they have to be
Right.
in that position if there is a way to assist them with the care.
And I started my career as a home hospice nurse. I've taken care of dying loved ones at home. I believe in dying at home very much, and that's certainly where I want to be myself. But over the years, I've come to understand and realize that that's not the right choice for everyone. And there should be no judgment about that. And that people should not be penalized because they're not able to do that. So dying at home with hospice is one way, but there are other ways as well. And there are some huge benefits to dying in community. So being in a community home where you are surrounded by people who are going through something similar, by caregivers who have walked this road before, um, where you can get the guidance and the advice and the support of helping you figure out how you want this time to be, and give you support as you're figuring out what you want to do with these precious weeks or days or hours that you have left. And for a lot of people, when they're struggling to make this work at home, all they can focus on is the physical part. They are so exhausted, the physical burden is so high, trying to manage symptoms is so consuming that they get through this whole thing. And when it's over, they look back and think, I would have done this differently if I'd had a different kind of support. And that's one of our biggest goals, is we want to help people walk through this experience and know that they won't have regrets about it when it's over.
One thing, I recently visited an Omega home, and what impressed me so much was seeing the family members who were there visiting with their loved ones, but how much they connected with one another. And so they all visited the other patients, and the families got together and they were supporting each other. They were paying attention and noting, like, oh, how is Mrs. Jones doing? And they showed up for each other, and it was a true community within that home. And I was thinking of how isolated caregivers in their own home feel at times, and to be in this place where there are other people going through exactly the same process that you're going through, and they support each other. There's just so much love. I could imagine some people will be friends forever,
Yeah.
having connected inside that home.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. That's one of the sort of unexpected gifts I think that people find as they sit around the dining room table together and share meals and share experiences and stories. And in our home, at every guest, and we call them guests, not patients, because it's an acknowledgement of them again, of their humanity, of them as people. They are not cogs in a medical healthcare system. They're not labeled as patients, they're simply people, and they're guests in our home. And so as they come here and try to personalize that experience, we invite them to take as much ownership of that as they can. And outside every guest room door is a little shelf with the room number on it. And on that shelf, at the time of death, we immediately light a candle and place it on that shelf. And that symbol is so immediately communicative of this sacred event that has happened that it literally changes the space around that room. And everybody knows what those candles mean. And so a family across the hall opens their door and comes out and they see it, and okay, they know that this family they've been visiting with, this is what they're going through now. And in some ways, it's almost like families get to have a practice run before it's their turn, because they see other people going through that, and they can choose to either go back in the room and shut the door and not have anything to do with it, they're too uncomfortable, or maybe they go knock on that other door and they say, you know, can I come in? I'm so sorry for your loss. And they exchange hugs, and then they become a part of the grieving process. Another ritual that we have is whenever a family is ready for their loved one to leave the house after a death, we call the funeral home. And when the funeral home comes, we all gather in the living room and we all stand in respect as that body goes out through the front door and is placed in that funeral home van. And the family may choose to follow that body out and greet us and hug us and talk to us on the way out, or they don't have to. They can stay behind, or they can leave before, whatever they want to do. But it's incredibly moving when other families come out and join that time of honor and respect, and they stand with us. Um, it's a unique experience that is part of the gift, I think, that this is for our community. We bear witness every day to the sacredness of human life, and we offer people an opportunity to stop, take the pause that they need to really think about what this means for themselves, for their loved ones, and be able to think, what can I carry out of this house? What do I take with me that might change my life? And am I going to live differently because of the experience that I've had here?
Do you ever have family members who want to come back as volunteers to help out? Because I
Yeah,
could imagine that.
we absolutely do. And we ask them to take a little bit of time for their grief and their journey. But when they're ready, we do welcome them back. We did a survey. We have about 100 active volunteers right now. And we did a survey a year or two ago to find out what their connection was and have that data. And we found that over half of our volunteers had an experience with us, either
Mm.
through a loved one or a friend or something like that. So that very much does motivate them to pay it forward and come back. I think it says a lot because I hear stories from people a lot, and have for all of my career, about people who avoid where their loved one died. So if that was a nursing home or a hospital or a car accident in a certain area of town, they will go out of their way to not drive down that street, to not drive by that nursing home, not drive by that hospital, because they have such a negative association with that experience. Here, people come back. And for me, that is such a testimony to the fact that this is not some horrible, awful experience that they just endured and now want to move on and forget about. Instead, it's become a part of their story as a family. It's become a part of their life. And maybe they want to come back and just visit the bedroom or walk the gardens or go to our memorial space. Or maybe they want to volunteer and be here one day every week. Or maybe they want to bring a meal by a couple of times a year to share with other families. But they want to be a part of this community, and they take value in how they live their lives by their continued relationship with us.
Mm. Wow, and that's so just that's a beautiful testimony to the power of this type of model, and the fact that yes, the Omega home still holds the memories of the pain of grief. It also holds all these beautiful memories of love and connection and kindness and compassion that accompany them through their grief. And I think that's what we wish everyone could have that when they've
Right.
experienced the death of a loved one and they're going through grief.
Right, and this is not a medical experience here. It's a family experience. And once we get someone admitted to this home, settled in, the very first thing we pay attention to is their physical body and their hygiene and their care. And we give them a bath and we wash their hair and we clean their mouths and we put a pretty gown or a nice t-shirt on them. We don't use hospital gowns. We use their own clothes. We make them as comfortable as we possibly can. And we open the French doors or the blinds and we let that natural light in and we play soft music, and families come in and they feel like they're able to reclaim this person as their mom or their dad or their loved one, not a patient in a hospital bed. And then they get to start really thinking about, okay, we're not worried about lab tests. We're not worried about x-rays. We're not trying to get here at 5 o'clock in the morning to catch the doctor. We're really at a space where we're trying to work together to figure out what's next. And what does that mean for this person that's dying? Are there relationships that they need to reconcile? Are there people that they're estranged from that they need to connect with? Is there business that they need to take care of? Do they have financial matters or business matters that they need to solve? Do they have a bucket list, something that whimsical or fun or something that they really want to do? What kind of legacy do they want to leave behind for their loved ones? We've had people write letters to grandkids to be given to them on their graduation dates or on their wedding dates because they're not going to be able to be a physical part of that event. And then just simply to have the time to be present in peace and silence and share conversation or memories. All of that's the work that's going on in an Omega home. There is physical care happening. Hospice is coming out and providing that medical management. But the big work, the important work that's being done is that work in the soul.
Mm. Well, I know you mentioned 20 years ago. It's probably hard to
Yeah.
even believe it's been 20 years. Clarehouse started as an apartment. How has it evolved from that beginning?
So we did that initial pilot project in an apartment with a 6-month lease, and we thought we'll test this model and see if this will work. We were this little 3-bedroom home, comfort care only, no skilled nursing, no IVs, no tube feedings, no injections, no blood sugar management, comfort care only that was overseen by a medical hospice provider, no charge for our services, a lay level of staff with an RN as a manager and providing the oversight. That was our model. We couldn't find anything really like that in the country at the time, although we've since discovered that there are homes just like us that are even older than us. But that was the model we started with. And after 6 months, we still had our little nest egg in the bank. We had taken care of about 35 people, and we were getting referrals all the time. People were donating to us as we went along. Families were paying it forward. We were starting to get some grants. We were building relationships with churches and businesses and civic organizations. And so we took another step forward and we rented a second apartment and we signed another 6-month lease on the first unit, and we kept going. And we lived like that for 6 years in the apartments. We eventually had 4 units. It was a quadruplex, and so we had all 4 units in one building, and they let us knock holes in the walls between the units, so it was all under one roof. And it was an odd
Wow.
space. It wasn't, built for our needs. It wasn't handicap accessible. We had 4 kitchens and 4 living rooms, but we made space for 8 bedrooms, and we took care of over 1,000 people in
Oh my
those
gosh.
apartments in that 6 years. And it was sacred space, and families loved it. But we knew we needed a permanent home that was purpose built for our needs. And we felt like we were strong enough about 5 to 6 years in to do a successful capital campaign. Still 100% charity organization, still not charging a dime for our services. We took our message out to the community and said we need to build a permanent home. And we raised almost $8 million in about 18 months.
Oh my
We
gosh.
built this
Wow.
beautiful state-of-the-art home for our needs. We gathered up everything we learned in those 6 years in the apartment and transformed that into a home that really was purposefully designed for the kind of care that we're providing. And we have this 14,000 square foot home with 10 bedrooms, lots of space for families to gather. We're on a 6-acre campus with gardens and a creek and a chapel, labyrinth, a memorial garden. And it's been home for us now since 2009. We are celebrating our 20th anniversary in October of this year, and we've cared for over 6,000 people now in all of these 20 years. We've had the honor of caring for multiple people from the same family because
Mhm.
we've become their go-to space. And when they have this need again in their family, they call us. So we're building these relationships over time in the community, which is really special for us as well. So yeah, it's been a 2-decade long journey, but we are ensconced in this community as a beloved fixture of compassion.
That's a beautiful way to say it, because I was just going to say it sounds like you are now such a part of the community that you're probably getting support even from surprising places and groups and people that you might not have expected, but you've proven your value to the community, and so the community wants you there, and they'll
Yeah,
support you being there.
yeah. And any one of us that work or volunteer here, we can walk into a grocery store with our name tag on, and we are going to run into somebody that says, "Oh my gosh, my neighbor was at Clarehouse," or my best friend was at Clarehouse, my loved one was at Clarehouse, and it's always a positive interaction. It's not this sort of overwhelming sadness or hostility or anything like that. It's always this loving gratitude, and it's amazing that for such a you think a little 10-bedroom house in a greater metropolitan area of about 1 million people, you wouldn't think that we could reach that many, but we're also connected. That so many people have had a touch from this organization, and death is the universal experience. It's one of those things that we all know we're going to deal with, and many of us deal with many times throughout our lives.
Well, it's my contention that a home like this also changes the community around it because of, as you said, of the awareness of what you do. It's so many more people are now thinking about death and getting more comfortable with death and more aware of it. It's like a ripple effect throughout the community at a time when we're dealing with so much death denial and death phobia in our society as a whole. It seems like just the presence of Clarehouse in your community, I have to believe that it changes the people around you who live in that community.
I believe that too. And we've extended our mission to become a place of education as well as care and support. We can't take care of everybody. We have a waiting list all the time. We can't reach all the needs of this community, but we can take our expertise of what we've learned in walking this journey with people and take that outside this building and back out into the community and share with people how to support a loved one through a life-threatening illness, how to navigate the healthcare system, how to have a goals of care conversation with a healthcare provider, how to put all those tools together to best advocate for your loved one or for yourself. And education has become a very big part of our mission, as it has with most established Omega homes. It becomes a natural outreach for us that we know that what we have to offer in this house is also valuable in every home in the community. And if we can equip people with some tools and skills, we want to be able to do that.
Mm. That's really beautiful. Well, from the moment I first heard about this model, which was quite a few years ago myself, I've been passionate about it because, like you, doing work in hospice, I saw the gaps. I saw all the time the people that we weren't able to serve because they didn't have a caregiver at home. And I just knew all along, so we need something else. We need more than this. Hospice is great, but we need more. And this model is so wonderful at filling the gaps. But I personally now have witnessed 2 attempts at starting Omega Homes in 2 different communities that both failed because it's not easy. And talk about what it takes actually for someone to start a home like this.
We had been open about 3 years, and I was continuing to search on the internet for like models for houses like us. And I was searching one day and I came across a website for something called Our Community House of Hope in Thousand Oaks, California. And as I read, they weren't open yet. It was a vision that they had of care within their community. And as I read through this website, I thought, gosh, those are our words. Those are the things we say. That's how we describe ourselves. And they were envisioning the same thing. And there was a phone number, and I called out Teresa, one of the founders, and I said, what you're trying to do, we're about 3 years ahead of you, and you got to come to Tulsa. We got to talk because we can help you. This can be done, and this is how we've done it. And she and her partner got on a plane within a couple of weeks and came to Tulsa and did what was our first site visit that we hosted, and we became fast friends and became a part of mentoring that home, which opened a few years later in Thousand Oaks. And that started this whole journey for us of outreach through spreading the model. And we began to welcome site visitors from all over the country, continue to do that research and connect with people. People would find our website, we would find them online. And then we encountered a house in Cleveland that's been open a couple of years longer than us, and Sarah House in California that's been open 30 something years, and Francis House in Syracuse, New York, that's been open around 30 years. You know, homes that were older than us that saw the same problem in their community, envisioned the same solution, worked their fannies off to make it happen in their community, and had been doing it for decades as well. The affirmation of the model that gave me was incredible, to know that other people face the same problem. This was a universal need throughout communities, and people came up with the same answer and were making it work. There was no way we weren't going to bond over that. And all these homes, as we began to connect, we really bonded, and it was like we found our brothers and sisters and our tribe, and whatever you want to call it, we found our people. So we began to gather, we began to meet regularly. Eventually that evolved into the formalized structure of the Omega Home Network, which is a national membership organization of homes like Clarehouse. We chose the word Omega because of the, that symbolism of the beginning and the end, and became Omega Homes. In the professional literature, it's known as a social model hospice as compared to the medical model that most people are familiar with. And we've defined that very clearly. There are, I think, 5 published articles now about the model, about how it compares and contrasts with medical hospice, and how it fits into the continuum of care in the healthcare system, as well as what's the secret sauce of an Omega home, what makes it different and special. But the unifying factors among all of us is that we're all freestanding nonprofits. We are not the medical hospice provider. We are comfort care only homes. We don't provide skilled nursing. We are community-based and funded. We operate with the support of volunteers. We don't charge for services, or if we do, it's a sliding scale, but we never turn anyone away. And we are all committed to supporting each other and to share what we've learned.
And it's a wonderful model. It seems too that it's adaptable because any community can adopt it based on whatever their needs are. Like, it seems like some of the homes are a little different from others, but it's because they're filling a certain gap or meeting the needs of a particular segment of their population. And that's
Right.
what's amazing about it too, is that you can take the model in, make it fit the community that you're living in.
And one example of that is a special interest group that's formed within our membership of people who serve those who are homeless. So there are about 5 to 6 homes in our membership that really their niche is unsheltered population, and that's strictly who they take care of. It's such a big need for some communities that they've chosen to focus on that specific niche, and those homes are helping each other. You know, what are the specific challenges of dealing with that population of people, and how do we best serve them? Um, you know, how we're funded may differ to some extent. Some people get a lot of funding through a faith community. There's a home now in North Tulsa that is funded through Catholic Charities. Um, some people have, you know, one or two very large donors, and some of us have, you know, several thousand or more, you know, 10,000s that are on our donor list. But yeah, it is, you know, one of the things that when we're mentoring people is that we really, really counsel people to start small. That, you know, nobody opens a place like Clarehouse in the beginning, that you've got to prove the model, the concept, the need, the utilization, the funding, the support. All of that is part of proving a new model within a community. And you've got to start small to do that. And a pilot, you know, in a rented space is a wonderful place to start, because as soon as people in the healthcare system understand fully what you do and the benefit you can offer patients and families, they're on board. But it's very hard for them to imagine it until they've seen it or experienced it.
Mm. I think that's really good advice. You have to start small, because the two projects that I saw that got stalled out were both trying to jump to a house, a 6 or 8 bedroom house immediately. And the funding wasn't there, the support wasn't there, and even community awareness. And I think what both of them found is that they just hadn't done enough groundwork yet
Right.
to make sure other people understood what they were doing and the importance of it. And so that's very good advice, which you learned by doing it.
And I've seen that happen several times, that people overextend their expectations instead of laying that groundwork and introducing the concept and proving the value of it before making a huge capital investment or trying to raise, you know, there was no way we were going to raise a couple of $1 million. People didn't, the general community, they didn't know me. They didn't understand the need. They said, we've got 40 hospice programs in Tulsa. Why would we need another one? They didn't get it. We had nursing homes and hospice providers that were calling the state health department to report us because they said we were operating illegally without a license, because they thought we were competition. They didn't get what we were doing. They didn't, I mean, I had all these conversations with the health department. They knew exactly who we were and what we were doing, and then we didn't have to have a license. We don't charge for services, so we don't have to be licensed and regulated. It is a win-win for us. That is a really huge benefit in the state of Oklahoma, that we now have 4 open homes in our state, and none of them have to be licensed because we're all free. We don't charge, but they're all members of the Omega Home Network. They adhere to the standards that the Omega Home Network um, advocates for, and I've been a part of mentoring all those projects, and you know, we're in relationship with each other. It's still all about community.
Mm. I love that. And I really like that the Omega Home Network came together, because it's such a great organization. I mean, that's one thing that you need when you're starting a huge project like this. You need mentorship. You need your own community and connections with other people doing the same hard thing somewhere else. And this opportunity to learn from one another is so valuable.
And I mentioned, you know, we made it up as we went along. Same thing with Francis House in Syracuse, New York. Sister Kathleen Osbelt founded that organization, and it was her vision, and she made it up as she went along. People don't have to do that anymore. They can connect with another Omega home that's been open and operating for years. They can get our startup manual. We have an actual binder that is a manual of what you need to do. They can attend our boot camp at our annual conference and sit through a day of hearing how you make this happen and what are all the best practice steps along the way. They have the kind of support now that those of us 20 and 30 years ago never had, but nobody has to reinvent the wheel anymore. We will help you do this. That doesn't mean that every project is going to be successful. And we've, as you've mentioned, I've seen several projects shut down because they could not sustain the funding. And part of that is a very real dynamic of most of us in this work come at it from a nursing or medical or social services or spirit, chaplaincy, spiritual standpoint. We're not nonprofit executives, we're not necessarily entrepreneurs, and we're not fundraisers. And you have to be humble enough to say what you don't know. Surround yourself with the people who know all those things that you don't, and then listen to their advice. And sometimes people just either get ahead of themselves, they think they know more than they do know, they won't listen to the advice of people around them, or they simply bite off more than they can possibly chew, and it's too big of a project and it's too overwhelming, and it crumbles beneath the weight of that.
Because it is, I mean, it is such a big thing to accomplish to be where you are now. But as you said, for 6 years you were in rented apartments before you moved on, and I think there's a certain humility about that too, being able to take it slowly, start small, and build gradually over time, just in terms of the goodwill you generate in the community and the awareness and education that you're able to disseminate too.
That I appreciate you making that point, Karen. It was really difficult for those 2.5 years or so in sharing the vision. And I I don't feel like what I did was so unusual, but I hear that from people a lot. Um, but I had an idea and I committed to it. And for me, there was just no turning back. Failure wasn't an option. I had sort of put my whole professional reputation into this project, and failure was not an option. But there were so many dark days and so many challenges that made me just feel hopeless that we were ever going to find a solution. But we just kept trying to figure it out. But this being humble enough to say, okay, this isn't going to work to start out trying to raise a couple $1,000,000 and build a 6 or 8 or 10 bedroom house. That's not how this is going to happen. We got to rent a space. We got to move into something that's maybe never what we thought it was. And we start with one person. And that was a watershed moment for me, was to think about just getting that first person under our wing and taking care of them. And the moment that she moved into our apartment, I relaxed. All of that angst, all of that anxiety went away because we were doing the mission. And it suddenly didn't matter if it was in a big, beautiful house on a lovely property. What mattered was we were doing the work and we were solving somebody's problem, somebody's issues, somebody's need. We were addressing it. And we took care of that one person, and then the next person, and the next person, and the next person. And that's what I try to instill in our members is just get started. It doesn't have to all be perfect. It doesn't have to be this big, beautiful thing. The place is not the most important thing. The work is the most important thing.
Oh, that's so very true. And I love how you said everything shifted in a sense, your perspective, as soon as you were able to start caring for people, for guests in the home. Then it's like, okay, this is what we're really about, and all these other things that we do have to be concerned about and worry about, they'll fall in place because we're doing our real mission, which is giving the care.
Yeah. Yeah. It breaks my heart when houses have to close. And invariably it's because of funding. You know, right now we have a 10 bedroom home. We own our own property. We don't have any debt or mortgage, and yet it still takes us about $1.5 million annually to provide this service. And that's That's the care as well as the education component of it. We care for about 350 people a year in our 10-bedroom home. We educate thousands of people a year. We utilize about 100 active volunteers, and there's about 28 members on our staff. So it's a small business that we're running here, and we know that we try to engage in every best practice, and we, nonprofit, being a nonprofit executive is something I've grown into over 20 years. I didn't know anything about it. I was a bedside nurse in starting this project. And that's one of the things, we have students in our home all the time. We have nursing students, medical students, social work chaplains, occupational therapy, family and human development. We work with about 22 different universities around our state who send students here for some kind of experience. And one of the things I always tell them is, for each of us individually, it's our responsibility to make a difference. And whatever area of service you choose, whether you're a nurse that's looking at neonatal intensive care or cardiac care or dialysis or whatever it might be, a physician, whatever specialty you want to go into, learn everything you can about it, become an expert, and then figure out what's missing and what patients and families need and how can you be a part of changing that. And if every one of us was focused on improving our own little niche of care, what a difference we can all make one by one. I don't think that the massive problems in our healthcare system are going to be fixed in Washington, D.C. or even at the state capitals. I think they're going to be fixed by those people that are on the front lines, that are the hands-on care deliverers. And we need to be the ones that have an idea. So have an idea and then do something about it.
And then do something. Yeah, that's so very true. I can just imagine there are people listening right now who are saying, "Oh my gosh, this is what my community needs. I would love to do this." And do you have any advice for where to begin? What if it's just one person alone? I mean, how do they even find? So I would imagine they need a few more like-minded people to be part of the team. And then how do they get started? What should they do first?
You're right. They do need more people. And one person can have an idea, but you've got to be able to communicate that vision to other people for it to be successful. It could never have been my project. And I try not to say mine, I say we, us, our, because this is a community effort. And if you don't approach it that way, you're going to really have a hard time taking root. To be able to have the passion about something and have a vision is admirable, but to be able to communicate that vision and inspire others is what it takes to make something grow. So you've got to be able to put it into words and succinctly describe what it is you're trying to do, and then get other people excited about that. And you find those people within maybe your own friends and family initially, within your own community, whether that's a faith community or a work environment or a neighborhood, whatever that might be. But you find those people. Clarehouse started with a group of seven. It wasn't this massive bureaucratic sort of institution or corporate entity. It was a group of 7 people. 7 passionate, committed people who talk to other people and talk to other people and talk to other people. And so to be able to acknowledge that it's going to take a lot more than one person with a good idea is really important. You start talking about it, you reach out to the network and let us help you and inspire you and educate you and provide you with materials to move forward. That is a huge benefit that's available to people. And network with those people that are doing similar work. People that are working within the homeless community, people that are working within the hospice community. I mean, one of the first things I did was called around to all the hospices that I could get to talk to me. And I had just a little 5-question questionnaire. And I said, how many people in a year's time do you have in your program that need more help with caregiving than what's available to them in their own support system? And they would maybe say, oh, we've got 100 people like that, or we've got 50 people like that, and whatever. And then I said, how many of those people would use an outside resource like a freestanding home if it were available to them? And I got that number. And then I asked, would you be willing to refer to a nonprofit organization that provided a service like that? I just asked very simple question, and we refer to it as our community needs survey. And from that data, I was able to go to funders and say, our local hospice programs who are actually providing this care, out of the 20 of them I talked to, there are potentially 400 to 500 patients a year that would use this service. A 3-bedroom home is only a drop in the bucket to what this community needs. And I have a built-in referral source through these hospice programs who are looking for solutions to this caregiver crisis. So it doesn't have to be really complicated. It doesn't have to be a great big data-driven study that takes 3 years. I was able to demonstrate the need and the partnerships that would help us be able to serve through a very simple community survey that really did convince funders.
Well, I can imagine, first of all, people just listening to this conversation, they're getting ideas from hearing how you talk about it, how you might present this message to someone else and explain what it is. But also, if they go to the Omega Home Network website, is that where they'll find the starter kit? And even probably just reading things there, they may get ideas for how to talk about it and how to tell people what this is.
Yeah, the website is a wealth of information, and there is a great succinct description of the homes, the sort of the criteria for what we do and who we are and what we provide. There's an interactive map, a national map of all the homes in the country that are open and operating, as well as people who are carrying the vision. And so if you live in Tennessee, you can see that there's 1 open home and 2 other projects in development, and maybe you're pretty close to one that you can get involved with or partner with, or you can at least use them as a resource as you try to start a home in your own community. To access a lot of the resources like the startup manual and the online forum where we exchange Q&A all the time, you do have to have a membership to access those things. But it starts, I mean, the individual membership is $100 a year. We've made it as reasonable as we possibly can. So though some of the resources are available through memberships, some of the resources are simply available on the website.
And that, again, omegahomenetwork.org is the website for that. And you did say that the homes are kind of exploding right now. There's a lot of interest in new homes coming online. I'm really glad to hear about that.
Yeah, we had our first national gathering of homes, and it was, I think, 8 projects or open homes in 2014, 8 of us. And we fondly refer to that as our first national conference that happened here in Tulsa, Oklahoma at Clarehouse. And we continued to meet annually as a group, and as many people as wanted to come would come to that annual conference. And in 2017, we incorporated as the Omega Home Network. We got our 501c3. We began charging the membership dues. And here it is 6 years later, and we just passed the number 100 of active members in our network. About an even number of open operating homes and projects in development. So about 50 open homes across the country. I think we're in 27 states now, and about 50 projects in development.
Wow.
So yeah, it's grown amazingly. I think we get applications for memberships anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 new applications every month. Projects start and kind of stall or flourish, and people maybe have been members for 5 years and they haven't made a lot of progress, and some people join and within 18 months they're getting their home open. It's just a wide variety of experiences, and for some people it's just become a part of their life, that they're just a part of this community.
Wow. Well, I would love to see it spread to every state, every community. I mean, I can't think of a community that wouldn't need something
Mhm.
like this. So it's a hard thing to do, but it's so good. And it's really the right thing. And the more we spread awareness and education, the more we'll actually make it easier for some communities to get started, the more people hear about it and understand the value that it offers to the community.
Right, and it is a challenging project. Any startup is difficult, especially a startup that is offering a free service. And that's got to happen intentionally and deliberately and slowly with a lot of support. But that's what the network is for, is to try to help guide people through that and keep you inspired and passionate about bringing this kind of service to the community, because it does change lives, not only for the person who is dying. I mean, what our ultimate goal is to help somebody find a peaceful death in a way that they choose, that meets their dignity and their values and their goals for that time. But the extension of that is that for every family or friend that walks out this door after saying goodbye to a loved one, hopefully they're going to live more fully because of the experience that they've had, and they are going to make choices that also reflect a thoughtful, deliberate approach to living as fully as possible. And that just has this massive ripple effect throughout a community.
Oh, so true. So powerful. Well, Kelley, I want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time to talk to me today about Omega Homes. But I just want to thank you for having this vision 20 years ago and then seeing it through. And now, not only that, but expanding it and helping other people and being a mentor and everything you're doing. And I hope this conversation inspires a few other people to look into it, and so that we get even more Omega homes around the country.
I hope so too. It is such a privilege to walk with people on this journey and to be a part of a loving community. I think that we all say we get more than we give.
So very true. Well, thank you again, Kelley. I hope you enjoyed that interview. I hope that you will share it if you know someone who might be interested in starting an Omega home in your community, since it's packed with information, and we'll let them know how they can learn more and get involved with the Omega Home Network. So I'll be back next week with another interview. And until then, take care. Goodbye.